I'd like to open the meeting. Welcome to the Lee Select Board meeting. It's June 17th. Before we get started, I'll announce that pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, I'm hereby informing all attendees that a video and audio recording is being made of this meeting, so you have been informed. With that, our first order of business is the open session minutes for, is that right? June 3rd or? Okay. Yeah, there they are in front of me, June 3rd. So if you have any amendments, or I would entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the open session minutes of June 3rd as written.
I'll second that.
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Next on our agenda, we have public comment. So if anybody here from the public would like to speak, I see a hand on Zoom. Please identify yourself and let us know what you have to say.
Hello, I'm Kathy Hall, Chairwoman of the Lee Youth Commission, and I have great news. The work for the expansion of the skateboard park at the Lee Athletic Field will resume this week, weather permitting. New basketball hoops for toddlers and youngsters will be available at the field soon. Work on removing and installing new basketball backboards, rims, and nets will also be started soon at the Lee Athletic Field. Also, work on other basketball sites in Lee will start in the new fiscal year. In other news, the Lee Youth Commission has purchased branded t-shirts, tablecloth, banner, and pop-up tent for events. We've already used them at the Farmers Market, the Lee Pride, and we will be using it at the Kiwanis Family Day Fun Day this Saturday. We also have skating safety pads to be available for loan once we have the proper weather to set up the ice rink. We hope that everybody was able to read the article in the Berkshire Eagle and watch the news about Lee and the Lee Youth Commission and what we do on WNYT NBC News Channel 13 in Albany. So far so good. We're happy to be involved in the town. We're happy to see so much going on, and we're just going to keep on trucking. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Still have public comment if there's anybody else here that's like to say anything. So if there's nothing further, we'll move into general business. Our first item of general business is an update from the station restaurant in town and a request to extend hours. So I think we have somebody here if you want to come up. Are you Anand?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, introduce yourself and
my name is Anand.
tell us what's going on.
Of the Station Guest Pub in Lee, and I'm here to make a request for extending our hours till midnight. And I spoke to Bob Haley about this, and he said he's gonna send an email or a letter to you.
Yeah, so we have
okay.
in front of us here an email correspondence between the Chambray, because I know that was one request from them to limit your hours,
Yeah.
and we kind of worked into the middle for now, and it seems like you guys are good neighbors and they're fine with extending the hours. So, you have anything else you'd like to?
Just the can I serve alcohol till midnight now, because I have the 11 before.
I think, does that need to go, Sabrina, back to the state, or as soon as we extend their hours, they'll be, yeah.
You can start right away.
Oh,
Yeah, so if we approve it tonight, you'll be able to start serving until 12.
that's awesome. Thank you.
So if there's no, go ahead, Gordon, yeah.
No questions. I was going to make a motion, but I'll
Sure.
wait for you to ask.
No, please make a motion.
Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to make an adjustment to the closing time of the serving alcohol at the station to be midnight, given the suggestion or the support of their neighbors at the Chambry Inn, that they've had good luck so far.
I will second that.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Before we call to a vote, I will call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right,
problem.
good enough.
Next on our agenda, we have a discussion of a wildlife feeding ban. And Sean Sullivan here. So why don't you introduce yourself and let us know.
First of all, good evening. My name is Sean Sullivan. I live at 215 Prospect Street. And I've come here more or less to get a discussion started on some sort of ban to feeding wild animals. I'd like to say one thing, I'm not opposed to or don't want to stop bird feeds or anything. I'm talking about dangerous animals, such as bears. In the Prospect Street region of town, as we all know, that it's a very walked area. A lot of people walk up and down that road daily. And personally, I've seen where people walking by a certain property on Prospect Street and stopped, seen bears, get scared, and walk away. A lot of times they've walked right by and the bear is probably 10, 15 feet away with their cubs. And as we all know, the most dangerous thing you can do with a bear is get between her and her cubs. Last year I got with Mr. Bailey about doing something about the situation. And from what I understand, and I've been told, that there's nothing that the police can do. There's nothing with the environmental police officers can do without having some sort of town bylaw or ordinance. And in fact, I was speaking with the EPO Conley just a little while ago, and we were discussing it, and he told me that a fed bear is a dangerous bear because what happens when the food system stops? And one of the main reasons why I can get along with the bears, in fact, several times over the last month, I've gotten out of my house, going to my car. There's a hedge right between my property and my neighbor's property, and right there's the bear going. It's like, oh, hey, how you doing? And I'm just concerned with my grandchildren. They love being outside. And in fact, if I can get an email, I can send you a video that my wife took approximately 2 weeks ago with a bear getting into and playing with my grandchildren's Perpego. It's a electric car, battery operated car. And he tipped it over several times, played with the wheels, and until the neighbor's dog came around, started barking, it left. Behind my house, there's a swamp. There's also some dry area where it's you can see the caravans where the bears head down to the north to along Prospect Street to this certain individual's property, and it's so blatant that the person has put up a bear crossing sign and mowed the area. And I understand we live in a rural area, but I think something needs to be done before a tragedy happens. And that's I'm willing to work with the town officials on doing some sort of bylaw or regulation or whatever you want to call it. And like I said before, something tragic happens.
Mr. Chairman, I did have a discussion after one of the parades or something, I think, this last year. Anyway, I did have a discussion, And the next day, I did go in and talk to the police chief.
Yes.
And I do know that the police have been involved. I know they've been there and spoken to a particular person who continues to feed the bears, put food out for them, thinking it's a good thing. And the police do understand how dangerous this is. And I was glad to see, I don't know if you brought this in or somebody else did, but there's two
There are,
proposed
yeah.
bylaws to use as models. One I like a lot more than the other, but that's, it's something that we can work on. And I think that this becomes part of our corporate bylaw, not necessarily as.
Yeah, it'd be a general bylaw.
Yeah, it'd be a
So
general bylaw.
Majority vote at town
Yes.
meeting to.
Right,
yeah.
and so it'll have to wait till a town meeting, but in the meantime, I think we should get the language really vetted out well. And I really like the one from Northampton more than the other. The other seems to be a little brief.
Yeah.
But the other's okay.
Like I said, I don't want to see bird feeders being banned
Exactly.
or anything else like that. Or
Yeah.
regulations on trash cans. I mean,
Yeah,
my wife and I purchased I think it was $350 garbage can that was bear proof.
Right.
Because I got tired of the straps and they would be bending up each corner.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be bad if they just pulled the stuff out and ate it right there.
Yeah.
But they gotta take it and drag it
oh, yeah.
all over the
Oh, yeah.
yard. And,
Yeah.
I'm, like I said, and I just want to reiterate it, that I don't want to ruin somebody's fun
Yeah, right.
or anything, but I want to avoid a tragedy. And I think if you remember, there was a few years ago over New York State, down the Catskills, at a Jewish family farm, a bear took an infant
Yeah.
from the porch, and sadly enough, the infant died. And I don't want something like that happen in the town or anywhere. So.
Did you have something you were saying, Sean?
Well, I was gonna say, I appreciate the concern and the effort to work with us on this, and you're certainly not the only one in town that's, deals with bears, so I think it's a good step, and we'll definitely, work on this to bring it the next town
Yeah.
meeting. If we have a special one before May, then we might bring it up then. If not, we'll probably have to wait until May. But
Yeah, at the board's direction, I'm happy
Yeah.
to include this in the next warrant
Sure.
and put a draft together. And I think the health department did try to intervene in that as well to some extent. I think there was.
They did try to,
letters
your issue.
But
they
yeah,
did,
with,
yeah.
I mean, so we did as much as we could without the bylaw, but I understand at this point, this would be the next logical step, so.
yeah, and it outlines some definitions and some enforcement depending on which direction we would go. And it even, there's things we can put in there to guide people on what is allowable to
Yeah.
feed birds and that sort of
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
versus, what's not. So I think that would be a good step for the town.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that's one reason I like the Northampton one. It was very clear right up front. This isn't, you can keep feeding the birds. Don't worry about that.
Right.
Only if a bear continually comes and comes and comes, they're gonna say, bring your feeder in, that kind of thing. Because I know, I have videos of bears on my porch at my glass front door. And I had my own little discussion with a bear one day about, leaving stuff alone. And we don't keep anything out. We don't put garbage out. We don't do any of that
Yeah.
until garbage day. But, the bears are not necessarily afraid of anybody.
Yeah, no, and,
They're part of nature with us.
My son has chickens and,
Oh, yeah.
he feeds them. They're in a locked container with
Yeah.
with a whole bunch of bungees, and the table scraps or whatever the chickens eat, we put it in their
Yeah.
run, and then, if there's any like vegetable peelings or something
Sure.
left over, we go out there and pick it up, and just to prevent the bear from,
Yeah. Right.
free snacks and
Oh, yeah.
everything. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with our discussion, and
Good.
thanks again.
Thanks for
All right,
stepping up.
thank you. Thanks for coming in.
I think we don't need a motion for this to direct you
If
to
there's no objection,
Yeah, I think-
I'll get something.
draft it
next
and
draft
we'll work.
agenda,
Yeah. All right. Anything further that anybody wants to say about the wildlife feeding ban? Any questions? I don't see any.
Nobody's on.
So we'll move on to our next order of business, which we have, I think, a presentation from Courtney Morehouse about our Lee's hazard mitigation plan. And to my understanding, yeah.
Looks like you have a question.
Oh, Kathy, do you have a question about the wildlife feeding ban?
I have a question. I'm just very happy that this is being brought up because many times my husband and I, when we, you know, a meal down by the river for animals. And, you know, we've reported it, but we know that, you know, there's virtually nothing that can be done right now. But I just want people to be aware, don't be leaving.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so Courtney, I'll go ahead and pass this off to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your time. Here to sort of present what that plan entails, what it's good for, some of the details that's in it, but also just present the full draft plan to you. I printed two, but that's partly because the first one I printed had funky numbers. So one's got bad numbers and one, the page numbers make sense. So the hazard mitigation plan is a FEMA approved, or will be a FEMA approved plan looking at the hazards that might impact Lee and how to reduce the risk of those hazards. It also fits the guidelines from the state's municipal vulnerability preparedness program. So that's a state program that looks specifically at climate change impacts and then gives funding for those who have a full MVP plan put together. So this is a sort of two-in-one plan that gets you access to both federal funds through FEMA, hazard mitigation, as well as through the MVP state program, which is, you know, no small amount. It's about $3 million per municipality a year that you can apply for. And Lee has already applied for that program twice for the public safety complex and different elements in there. So in essence, what the entire plan does is do an analysis of where and how things are built in Lee and how exposed to risk of natural disasters those things are. So it goes through flooding and the valuation of property, how much of that property is located in the floodplain and therefore at risk. It looks at high winds, tropical storms, so all the sort of like natural disasters or you know, disasters caused. But it also looks at vector-borne illnesses, cybersecurity, and touches a little on how natural disasters impact or overlap with hazardous materials movement. So there is a chapter in there for how a big storm, for example, might transport hazardous materials throughout. It's not a requirement for FEMA, so we couldn't get much guidance on what that should look like. So we kind of did our best guess, and the committee looked at how that might, you know, how that might meet the needs of the town. The plan is kind of broken up into four main sections. Chapter 1, 2, 6, and 7 are kind of just like background administration, things that FEMA looks for in order to give a stamp of approval, right? So like an introduction to planning, the planning process, how it gets adopted, all that stuff. Chapter 3 is really the risk assessment. So if you're looking at like how much of our valued properties are at risk for flood, that would be in that section, chapter 3, and it's a very long section. The bulk of the plan is just an analysis of the impacts of different hazards on your economy, on people, on vulnerable populations, all of that, right? Chapter 4 looks at an analysis of the capabilities of the town. So what does the town already have in place, either policy or personnel or equipment-wise, to address hazards, and where are there gaps within that capabilities and capacity? And then chapter 5 is really the chapter you need to spend the most time looking at, because it's the one chapter that they actually look at to get funds. And the main thing I would say is this action table is what you go to either the feds or the state to get funding. So what they're gonna ask, number one, is when you write that grant, does it show up and is it highly prioritized on this action table? So if you do nothing but read one section of the plan, I would read this table and go, are we missing any actions that you all want to see in this table? Or are there ways that there are actions in here that shouldn't show up? That's basically sort of the main. So those have been prioritized high, medium, low. We've estimated how much it'll cost. We've identified some preliminary grants that one might go after that these would be eligible for, you know, who would be the lead position. The top 4 prioritized actions, I kind of pulled out those for you specifically because those were the ones that I think the town's most, or at least the committee has identified as the most interested in going after grant funds for. The public safety complex being the biggest one on the list. So the public comment is open till the end of June. I guess we just want to sort of like open it up and say, public comment is there. Please do look through the plan. Provide us with critiques, tell us where we're missing data or information, because at the end of the day, you know, it has to represent what's actually happening. The public comments can come either through Chris and the town, or you can send them directly to me and my email's on the website at the town, through the announcements page, I think it's on the
Yeah, right
current
on the main
events.
page, there's
Yeah.
a news blurb, and
Right.
it's got all the.
So my email and phone number are there. So however people want to get in touch with me, I can take comments over the phone and integrate them. That all does become public record. We make an appendix with all the public comments. Unless it's like an easy fix, like, hey, you got the name of my road wrong. I'm probably not going to put that in an appendix. I'll just fix it in the plan type of thing. But yeah, that's how it works. So I'm open to hearing your thoughts and questions.
Well, thanks for all your work. I'll open it up to either of you if you guys have anything you want to ask. I was going to ask first just about the comment period, but end of June?
End of June, yeah, June 30th, and that's when the state provided the grant funds, and so that's sort of the end of those state grant funds. But then at that point, with the comment period closed, we'll basically reconcile those comments and then send it off to MEMA. They'll review it, send it to FEMA after we've sort of made the tweaks that they request, and then we tweak it again, and it becomes available for adoption. And then that's when it comes back to you all, you formally adopt it, and it becomes a live plan from the federal level. Right now, you have a live plan from the state's perspective, so you're able to go after those funds, yeah.
Right. We did apply for some this year.
Yep,
We haven't heard back yet, but we haven't.
yeah.
That was my next question, but either of you
Bob,
have?
go next, I usually go first.
Bob,
so I
do you have
have-
anything you want to?
No, I'd like to take the time to review.
Yes.
This is all for new grant money that's becoming available?
Yes, yep, yeah, so it's, yes, in essence.
Yeah, the state goes up to, was it up to 3 million a year?
It's 3 million for an individual community, and if you have like a common problem with maybe like 2 other communities, or even 1 other community, you can get up to 5 million for a project, yeah. So,
When you're ready, I just don't want to interrupt Bob either. So, you all set?
Yes.
So I did tortuously read through this.
okay, good. I mean, not many people read the full plan, so.
There's a lot of action items, there's a lot of money involved in some of them and whatnot. I won't bore everybody with the small things, but I did have a couple of questions on how we're gonna address. On the second page, it's 180 is what I wonder, it's a structure infrastructure issue on the lead position where it talks about emergency management director, DCR, Office of Dam Safety. When you talk about the emergency management director, are you talking about our town emergency management director or the MEMA region, regional
No, yeah,
director, or who are we talking about?
it's the town, yeah,
The town,
emergency
okay.
management director.
I just wanted to
That's a good
clarify that for
question, yeah.
myself. Okay.
It's, I think we wrote it to sort of be a shared conversation between, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, again, I don't want to have to write all this stuff out
Sure,
there if
yeah.
I don't have to. And then a couple other things I know, and one, when we talk about stormwater management, but then we also get into construction and floodplains, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure that the ZBA, I know you've got planning board, conservation, town planner, DPW, but there may be some input from the ZBA because our zoning bylaw deals,
Mm-hmm.
they would get special permits from, it's further down, and it's just a matter of, I mean, on page 182.
Oh,
middle.
yeah, okay.
But it's a matter of, should they be involved? Because
Yep.
they are a special permit granting authority, so maybe their input. And I think in one other area, I read that there was some comments about how our bylaw is a little behind times. And it's very behind times. And floodplain management.
You try to be gentle.
Yes, I'm trying to be nice. It's way, way behind. And then another question I had, which it will be the last thing I bring up at this moment, but I'll get you some comments, is I know there was a comment about the floodplains and how we need to upgrade our floodplain issues. And our maps were from the 1980s.
Yeah, 70s really,
Yeah,
when they
and-
actually did the studies.
Yes, and so we have copies upstairs.
Yeah.
There. But FEMA was very clear, they had no interest in working in Berkshire County because they were all down on the coast. Everything was coastal.
Yeah,
So if there's a way to look into that and see if we'd love to get FEMA to upgrade their maps for
Yeah.
Berkshire County, but that was through some seminars we had a while ago with the MEMA people.
yeah,
And they just didn't seem interested in
Yeah.
let an engineer figure it out. You know, they didn't want to
Yeah.
come back and do the studies.
Yeah,
I think we need to.
we've come across this, I mean, there are some communities in the Berkshires that don't have any maps, and that's
Yeah.
because they sort of fall, like, Mount Washington has
Right,
no
right.
maps whatsoever because they're sort of in Albany, they're in no man's land there. So I've been talking with MEMA and FEMA about that issue in the Berkshires. They keep saying, yes, you're 7 years away, you're 7 years away. They've been saying that for 17
Long time.
years.
Yeah.
I will also say that the state has been leading their own effort to update the maps and also integrate greater storm precipitation for the future. So they're really trying to pick up the ball. My only caveat to that is what's enforceable at the federal level when it comes to a national flood insurance policy is the FEMA floodplain maps, right? That's what you can actually pass policy on. Even at the town level, that's the most enforceable. So even if we get those maps, it's good information for you as the town to say, here's the areas that are most at risk or will be. But really, we need FEMA to pick it up
Yeah, I
and
agree.
update
I
those
agree.
maps. Yeah, we've been sort of advocating for that
Okay.
for a number of years, but it's
I don't know if
it's
we
a
have
point
to-
well taken,
Do
yeah.
we reach out to our senators? They're supposed to be.
Absolutely. I mean, the more you sort of push
Yeah.
at the federal level, that's who they answer to, so, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Understood. So when you're talking about, and I, see you got low, medium, high,
Yeah.
priorities. On some of the low ones that aren't a lot of money,
So maybe they're lower
is it
hanging
good to
fruit.
throw a few of those in along with some high ones, like some high priorities? Do you throw a few or do you just go for the biggies?
What I've
do
noticed
you
is
think?
there's not, I think it's more of a matter of, are there any of those low ones that you feel like we could get this done real easy?
Yeah.
Make it a higher priority so that when you write that grant, you can say this was identified as a high priority.
Okay.
That's really where I would think strategically about how you want to place those.
Yeah.
Is how do you want to write those? How do you want to write those grants, or how do you want to address it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's a self-imposed ranking. It doesn't
Okay.
have much impact otherwise,
Okay.
except for when you go to get money for it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because I was wondering about, because some of these lows, some of them are very important, but only if we have a seismic event.
Yeah.
If we don't have one.
Right. If you don't have a seismic
Not
event,
a problem.
you're good to go.
Everything's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
But if we have a good sized shake, this building's gonna come down.
Yeah.
The fire station's gonna come down.
Yeah.
All these old brick unreinforced masonry buildings are gonna be major problems.
Yeah.
So yes, I can see why you'd say it's kind of a low
It's a-
priority, but yet at least the planning part, okay, well, that answers my, I won't
Great.
go into any more
Yeah, it's fine.
questions, but
Yeah.
that kind of was some of the things that were on my mind.
Yeah,
I
Courtney.
appreciate it.
If I remember correctly too, when we did this, so we've had a committee that's met
Yes.
for the last 2 years. And I think everyone had to fill out, it was based on not only the severity, but the likelihood as well.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah.
So,
I get that.
well, that could be.
There's a matrix that we looked at, number of people impacted, size of the impact, as in like amount of land that's going to get impacted, the severity of the impact, and then I think those were the three is sort of and then you kind of weigh all those three and go, okay, yes, an earthquake would have a huge impact, but it's very unlikely to happen.
Right.
Yeah, it hasn't happened, that type of thing, yeah.
The only problem was that if it did happen, we'd lose all our communications and our
Yeah.
emergency vehicles.
Right, it'd be
And our
devastating.
police and it would be devastating.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right, incredibly low
Yeah.
priority as far as will it happen.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Okay, I just didn't know how we would go about, you know, and what do you even do?
Yeah,
You know, other
Yeah.
than the building codes pick up some of it. when
Right.
You go to do some work, but other than that, it just
Right.
sits there,
yeah.
waiting to,
Waiting to
Do
happen.
something.
Waiting to happen, yeah.
no, that was all. Thank you very much for your
Yeah, of course.
comments and your help.
Yeah, just one quick question.
Yeah.
We're talking about a mitigation action plan for the town of Lee. How does it, help me out, how does it work? I mean, seismic events don't stop at the town line.
Yeah,
Or weather, major weather events, that sort of
Right.
thing. Does this somehow interconnect the towns, or is there, turn it into a regional plan?
yeah, in a sense. So we do, as part of the process, we sort of reach out to neighboring towns and look at their plans too. So we sort of try to overlap priorities and figure out where is there over coordination. Some of that's dealt with on the emergency management side, so just a like very weird distinction in that hazard mitigation is lowering the risk from the get-go. Emergency management is once the thing happens, how are we coordinating the management of that? And so some of that, you have that with shared agreements, with,
Yeah.
what's the word I'm thinking?
Mutual aid.
Thank you,
Yeah.
mutual aid
Yeah.
agreements, thank you, yeah, I just like knew
Yeah.
that there was a, and, the other thing that sort of happens is once a disaster happens, a declaration is made over an area, and that sort of kicks into
Yeah.
gear everyone's sort of coordinated efforts on response and mitigation. And it opens up funding at a regional level around hazard mitigation funding. So you get more funding the more disasters you have, because in theory, you need to now better prepare for those disasters happening. So that's sort of one way. And then we reach out to the neighboring towns to comment on their plans. We look at their plans and try to overlap it. But it's, yeah, there's some coordination. But at the end of the day, like, this is a look at your capacity in particular. And part of that is, you know, the surrounding towns have mutual aid agreements. That's part of your capabilities and capacity to have those, yeah.
We can apply for a grant with other towns.
Yeah.
Yes,
if
yes,
there's a
of course.
common- Yeah.
Yeah,
And is there any comments here? I didn't notice it, and maybe it's not worth it. But with the number of bridges we have that are either out of commission
Yeah.
or limited in scope for weight,
yeah.
is there anything that should be put in the hazard mitigation once we submit it, or back to the committee for them to consider? You know, because one bridge in particular has to do with one of our larger employers and
Yeah.
in a very old building, you know, and to get there, you gotta go over 2 undersized bridges to get there anyway. So I didn't know if
Yeah.
if they actually didn't talk about it, maybe it would be nice to just include it somewhere in case we can
That's actually-
leverage something there.
A good point. I think we talk about culverts on
Yes, you do.
184,
A
but
lot
I
of
don't
flooding
think,
stuff.
right.
Yeah.
But I don't think we identified the bridges as a big one, so that might be something worth
Yeah, maybe-
developing.
Yeah, and it may have been because they don't fall under, the culverts do fall under MVP, but the bridges
Yes.
don't.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
don't
they
know if
kind of
that
fall
was-
under Mass DOT oddly,
Right.
but that's not
But
to
you'd
say
think-
you couldn't put them in
Right,
here
right.
for FEMA or, yeah.
Maybe at least raise a flag that, hey,
Yeah.
we've got all this, and if we gotta run 5 fire trucks across it or
Yeah.
a loaded, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
After a train derailment, then what are we gonna do about getting people in and out?
Yes, yeah,
That was my only thought.
that's a good point. Well taken.
Other than that, I got nothing.
All right.
Sean, just
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Short
Chair.
window.
I just want to thank Courtney and
Yes.
the work that she did and our committee members
Yeah.
who volunteered. The time we had several public info sessions and a lot of meetings and all sorts of other, you know.
And a very well-attended day-long workshop, which I think you were at, Gordon.
I have been there, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
It is. I'm not, believe me, I'm not being critical at all.
Oh, no. I
It's
mean,
it's
it's
a
public
lot to
yeah,
deal
it's
with,
not-
a lot to deal with, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It was
thank
like-
you.
So I guess some last sort of thoughts or question I have is the sort of frequency of this plan,
Yep.
the timeline to like update it in the future. What's that look like?
So the plans are good for 5 years at the federal level, and then you basically have about 3 years, and then you start thinking about applying for grants and doing it all over again. At the state level, it's also loosely 5 years. They don't make you go through the same planning process. They kind of build upon that and help you develop it more. So at the state level, they have what they're calling MVP 2.0, which also comes with $50,000 of seed funding for a specific project, which is kind of nice. They've kind of like thrown in some money in addition to just the money to actually do the plan or to analyze the plan and come up with some more detailed stuff. So that is, but in essence, you have about 5 years from when you formally adopt the plan. So.
And is that something we do another committee for, or is this a standing committee?
So it was an ad hoc committee.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
But yeah,
So
I
we
mean,
would
if we're
kind of
gonna,
reform and do it.
if we're gonna do it, but I don't know if it's not a full, like
Maybe it's
redo
just-
of the plan.
It's not
an
a full
update.
redo, it's an
So-
update. And basically what we do is we look at the action table and we say, what progress have you made? What has changed about the town? You know, have the demographics changed? Has the population changed? Has the valuation of businesses changed? That sort of thing. We update some of that background information and then we say, these are the progresses that have been made. Here's where we'd like to go next. So it's a much more truncated process, 6 months, that sort of thing. So you don't have to do this
Yeah.
behemoth again, 257 pages.
Great.
Yeah,
Yeah, if there's nothing further, thank you again.
yeah,
And,
thank you.
We'll look forward to the final product.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Have a good one. Thanks, Bruce.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, our next order of business, looks like we have a few appointments to consider. First, there's a couple members of the Appalachian Trail Committee to be considered as alternates, and volunteers for driving, I think. Or driver for AT hiker pickups.
Yep.
So I'd entertain a motion to appoint Joan and Sal D'Angelo.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we appoint them to the Appalachian Trail Committee as
alternates, yeah.
non-voting members of the committee.
I would second that.
If there's no further discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have a discussion about the Lee Affordable Housing Trust that we've now, we appointed 2 members at the last meeting, I believe?
Right, yeah, and
Yeah,
a member of the select board
right.
is one of the other positions that there's a total of 5. Usually a member of the select board, 4 other members, and then the town administrator, myself, could be an ex officio member or a voting member. It could go either way, but I mean, or not any member at all. So, but that would be one of the 5 if you were to have the administrator as a voting member,
As a
which
voter,
would
yeah.
take, so, but that's obviously up to you guys.
Well, Chris,
But we do want, by bylaws, we
Right.
should have a select board member as
Well,
a voting member on it. So.
If I would suggest if you all would like to consider Chris first, and then we'll talk about the select board member. What do you guys think about our town administrator serving on the board? Would you like to serve on the board as a voting member or a non-voting member? Does it?
Happy to be on it. If there's not enough people and you would like me to vote, I'm happy to. So we can I'm happy to do that. And if you want to make that decision after we get,
We don't have to tonight.
But I'm happy to do either way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if there is a member of the public that wants to get involved in,
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that was actually a point I was just gonna make, that I don't mind, but what I don't want to do is have a voting select board member and then take away citizens' voice.
Yep.
But I want our town administrator to be there, and, even if it's to chair it as a non-voting member, but to chair it and sort of help direct things to where it needs to go. But then if we don't get any volunteers, then yeah, I absolutely think the town administrator should have votes so we can get business done.
Sure.
'Cause that's the critical issue, is to get business done.
Yeah.
So if that's, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I agree 100%, yeah.
So sorry to add another thing to your plate, Chris, but Bob, do you have any thoughts?
So we're going to put it out there to see if we can get.
We have put it out, we've gotten, like I say, we're, with you, with the select board member, we'll have a quorum, but we'll still have 2 positions
empty
left. But we
spots.
will be able to get things started at least. And see, if we do get a couple more people, even
Yeah.
better, but.
yeah, I think that would be good to maybe keep it on our agenda for the next meeting to see if anybody else is asking. And if one or none, then maybe then we also add Chris as a voting member. We can always take you off as a voting member. And, if people are banging down the doors, which I doubt. But yeah, I mean, if that works. And as far as a select board member, I think that, Sean would be a great person to do this.
You were gonna say that.
Oh, of course. Your chair, it's the weight of the chair, man.
Well, I was gonna, no, I was,
You interrupted me, Gordon.
Yeah. Sorry, Bob.
no, I'm more than happy to serve on the committee. I was gonna suggest that in some way maybe the select board would share this role, but it being a staggered 3-year term, I don't know, so I don't know that would work. For instance, I was thinking, well, could it be that the select board chair is always the one that
Yeah.
served on the board? And then we would rotate with the chairmanship, but no, I'm happy to accept
think
your
we could-
nomination. Is that a nomination?
Yeah, sure, I would, but to further what you were just saying, if the board as we go into the future decides you always want the chair, then the outgoing chair can resign, and then we'll make a motion to put the new chair in.
Sure.
Or just keep you there forever.
Sure.
I mean, whatever works for me. So as long as I don't have another committee to work on, I'm okay. So yes, I would make a motion that you be on the Affordable Housing Trust as the voting member and the select board member.
And I would second that.
Motion and a second. I will accept your appointment. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Good.
And we'll table
Absolutely.
the town administrator to see if anybody else wants to apply. There's two seats left.
2 voting.
Two
yeah.
voting seats left to appoint to consider.
Mr. Chairman, are there a number of non-voting, like, are there alternates, or how,
a good question.
or is it just, they're not an alternate really, but they can come, but they can't vote?
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody can come to
Yes,
the meetings, of
understood.
course. Yeah, there was no provisions in the
doesn't-
bylaw for
yeah.
any additional
Okay.
membership,
All right. Yeah.
other than the town administrator
Okay.
as an option
Sure.
as a either voting or a ex officio, non-voting
Sure.
member.
Okay.
So, it,
Well, I'm also willing to have the town administrator be on ex officio with no voting powers at this point, just to make sure that he's there and participates. I think, ensure that he doesn't go home and then he has to go to all these. I mean, if that's appropriate.
I was thinking that as well. We could appoint you as a non-voting member now and then
Yeah.
move you to,
Yeah,
just like we
absolutely,
could
yeah.
appoint you as a voting member
Yeah.
and move you to a non-voting member, so we could, I mean, if you want to, do you want to make that motion?
Yeah, I would make that motion, that town administrator be on the Lee Affordable Housing Trust as an ex officio non-member, a non-voting member, but he is a member of the board.
Second that.
Motion and a second made. Any further discussion? Chris, anything else you want to say?
yeah, just that we can kind of get things kicked off. I would like to have sort of a preliminary meeting just to kind of go over a few things, but we did get a grant for this. So we do have training coming with it that's part of paid for by the grant. So I'd like to kind of while we can start, and I think we should, just to do some preliminary things, I'd like to do the training after we've given it a little more time, see if we get another member or two.
That's a great
Okay,
point,
yeah.
yeah, that's good.
Sure. So about the motion to appoint Chris as a non-voting member, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, if there's nothing further on appointments, I don't think there is, we'll move on to our next order of business. We have a temporary sign permit to consider from the First Congregational Church. Looks like a crafts fair sign, 3 square feet. They looking to waive the fee? Yeah, so I don't have any issues about this unless either of you have anything. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we grant the sign permit as written to the First Congregational Church.
And waive the fee?
And waive the fee, yes.
I'll second that.
If there's no further discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next order of business, we have a couple gas permits to look at. So the first one I have, just so that we're all looking at the same one, 15 Tamarack Ave. Replacement of a riser, replace raise riser at house, right side of house. They're working all on private property. No cut to the road is expected. And I see that it's signed off by the DPW and police chief. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we sign off, that we have you sign off on the application for replacing the gas at 15 Tamarack Avenue.
Motion, do I have a second?
A second.
If there's no further discussion on 15 Tamarack Ave, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next one we have is 25 Hartwood Road, and it's very similar, replace and raise riser. This one's on the left side of their house, all on private property. No cuts in the road expected, and both sign-offs from the DPW and police chief. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move we grant a permit to Berkshire Gas for the replacement or raise the riser at the house at 25 Hartwood Road.
I will second that.
Motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next we have any topic not anticipated. Do either of you have anything you'd like to raise at this moment?
No.
I have something I'd like on a future agenda, not to be discussed tonight.
Sure.
And that is, it has been, and this isn't a criticism to anyone, but it has been many, many years since the special permit granting authorities, which is Select Board, Planning Board, and ZBA, have had training. There have been a lot of changes to the laws, a lot of changes. So I think that some training by the special permit for the special permit granting authority, which probably either through Berkshire Regional Planning or I think UMass, the extension also has some really good training. And sometimes you got to go out of town for anybody to pay attention to you when you come into town. You know, familiarity issues. And then also not just special permits, but then for ZBA also variances. So you have an appeal. So you have 3 different levels of things that, but I think it would be a good refresher for those people who have been involved. And we do have some new members on some of the boards, especially I think on the ZBA, and who have never probably dipped their toe in the water for variances or for appeals. And just going through a structure might be very helpful. So if we could look into that and talk about it at a future meeting.
Yeah, let's put it
that'd
on,
be good.
let's put it on the agenda.
Thank you.
For a future meeting. If you can get some information for next meeting, great. If not, you know, we can do it.
Well, and not to be a tough guy, but I think it has to be mandatory. I mean,
Yeah.
people need to
Yeah,
go
no,
to this.
I was gonna
You know, because all you need is 2 or 3 people who didn't attend, who don't follow the right path, and then all hell breaks loose when you get challenged in court or something, you know? So we really need to have everybody attend and pay attention. So, some good handouts. Thank you.
Yeah, and if that's, well, I don't want to discuss,
No,
but yeah.
we won't,
we'll put
I'm just saying, if we could talk
together
about it later.
Yeah, let's-
It's just
I was
one of the
gonna say, we have
things.
appointments coming up, so your timing is good, so.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Oh, that's great. Yeah, they
So-
can check off whether they're willing to be trained.
yeah.
Okay, that's a great thought. All right, well, thank you very much for entertaining that.
Absolutely. If there's nothing else not reasonably anticipated, we'll go to a town administrator report.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So a couple quick updates. First of all, we had a great opening for Museum on Main Street on the 7th, so, and that's been going really well. And thank you, Sabrina, for all your work. It was a great event. We had a great turnout, and we've been open Wednesday through Saturday. We had an event at the school related to it,
Nice.
and we had our community conversation. There's another event this weekend for, we're right, tomorrow for Juneteenth, and then we have the movie playing this weekend as well, so.
The kids picked up.
Yeah, that's the
That's
first
great,
half of
that's
what we
great.
did at the school.
Yeah.
What's the movie?
So,
What'd they pick?
Home Alone.
Home Alone.
We had 212.
Can visiting kids come? No, that's great.
212 voters, which is more than showed up at the town election.
You're right there.
That's great.
Well, it's more important. It's about watching a movie.
So that'll be here till mid-July. I encourage everyone to go.
Great.
We also had kicked off our new friendly approach to business today, getting some feedback from with the chamber and some other parties. So that should be going online in the next month or so, which is a part of an economic development project to bring in more businesses into Lee. On the public safety end, I have confirmation that the Quonset hut will finally come down on Monday.
I was going to ask about that.
We
Wow.
finally had all the approvals from the state on the
Great.
change for the asbestos. So it's scheduled to come down Monday. We will have GC bids right after the 4th of July. And as I mentioned, we expected a little gap right now between demolition and construction.
Right,
but we should see-
it's not holding the process up.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll be done before it needs to be,
Yeah.
so final, a mobilization on the GC should be happening in August. And then just a quick update on grants. This is kind of the end of grant season now, so we have applied for an MVP grant related to this, which Courtney spoke a little bit about earlier. We also have a grant in for additional paving. There is a vacant storefront initiative grant that's been submitted, and some additional funding for public safety. So we won't know most of those to the fall, but fingers crossed, so.
Great.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Our next regular meeting is July 1st, which will be the start of the new fiscal year. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.